Hey, what's up guys? This video is for section 8.6, which is solving a quadratic equation in the form x squared plus bx plus c. And this video is when a equals 1 in that quadratic equation. So I'll talk about what is the quadratic equation, quadratic trinomial, and how do you guys solve. But before we actually solve, we have to learn how to factor those trinomials in order to solve the equation. So let's talk about the quadratic trinomial that you guys see here on the screen, ax squared plus bx plus c. That trinomial, it is a quadratic because the highest exponent is 2, so you guys have an exponent squared, quadratic, and it has 3 different terms. The a value in this video is going to be equal to 1, so that's why up here we don't have a value that you see, it's an invisible 1. B and C, those are going to be numbers. So you guys will have a 1x squared plus a number x plus another number. So I have 2 examples here of a quadratic trinomial. To solve a quadratic trinomial equation, first you need to learn how to factor that quadratic trinomial, and then you guys can use the zero product property in order to solve. And on my previous video, we talked about the zero product property on solving those quadratic equations, so we'll use that property again. But first, we need to learn how to factor. So let's look at those examples that I have here. One of the quadratic trinomials is x squared plus 5x plus 6. Now, the idea to factor is to find 2 binomials that when you use the distributive property and you multiply, you guys will get that trinomial back. So the formula or the answer for this trinomial here on the screen, when you guys factor, is x plus 2 times x plus 3. Because if you guys multiply the x times the x right here, that's going to give you guys an x squared. If you guys multiply the x times the 3, that's going to be a 3x. And if you multiply the 2 times the x, that's going to be a 2x. And if you combine 3x and 2x, you combine like terms, that's going to be 5x right here. And when you multiply the 2 times the 3 over here, you guys will get the 6. So eventually, you guys will get that trinomial back. So our goal is to find those 2 factors, which are binomials that when you multiply, you're going to get that trinomial back. So this is another example. The variable doesn't really matter. You guys can have any letter in the alphabet, an X, a Y, an M, a T. But the quadratic trinomial must have an exponent of 2, the highest exponent, that's your degree, and it must have 3 different terms, quadratic trinomial. And notice that every trinomial, those 2 examples here, they only have 1 variable in the trinomial. So we have an X, M, and M. So let's go ahead and practice how to factor first, and then we can start talking about using the zero property to solve. So factoring a quadratic trinomial, there's a few methods you guys can use. I'm going to show you guys one where you guys will use a diagram kind of like an X. Some teachers, they say the diamond method where you guys use the X, but I don't use that word a lot. So I just say the diagram, the big X. So there's 3 steps in the method that I'm going to show you guys how to factor the trinomial. So remember that a quadratic trinomial is in this form, ax squared plus bx plus c. A is the number, just a number, the one with that has the x squared. And for today, for this video, a is going to be 1. B is the one in the middle. So you guys have a number here. It might be a minus, it might be a plus, but you guys have the middle term b, and c is going to be the constant. So the 3 steps to factor. Remember that we are looking for those 2 binomials, the factors that will multiply to that specific trinomial. So you guys will do an x, just like this here. On top of the x, on the diagram, you guys will multiply the a and the c. You actually multiply the numbers. A is going to be 1 for today, but you guys will multiply 1 times the constant, times c. And I like to show a little line here, so you know that I am multiplying the a and the c. Whatever you guys get, you put that number on top of the x, right here. On the bottom, you guys will just bring down the b value. And if it's minus, you put a negative here. Right now it's positive, you put a positive right there. When you guys have those 2 numbers, you have a number up here, you guys have a number down here. You guys will look for 2 factors, 2 numbers that multiplies to this specific number and will combine to the b value. So that sounds a little bit tricky, but once you guys get used to it, and this is where practice comes in, you guys will do this really fast. So you need to find two numbers that you multiply and you get the number on the top, but at the same time, you guys will combine, so you're going to add or subtract the numbers, and you need to get the number down here. So you combine and you get the b value, you multiply and you get the product on the top. When you guys find those two factors, step number 2, you are going to make two binomials multiplying each other with the ax term and the two factors. So I gave you guys this example here. You're going to put the ax term in the beginning of the first parenthesis and the ax term in the second parenthesis. So whatever you guys have up here, you guys will put ax here and then the ax. Notice the x don't have a squared because when you multiply, that's when you get the x squared. If you put a squared here, x squared, when you multiply x squared times x squared, that's going to be x to the 4th power. We don't want that. We want an x squared. So you just put an ax and an ax. After the term ax, you are going to bring down factor number 1 and you're going to put it here. And you're going to bring down factor number 2 and you're going to put it right here. So that's going to be your setup for your answer. You have two binomials multiplying each other. In step number 3, you guys are going to divide the binomials by its GCF if they have one. So if you guys can divide, I'm going to say kind of like reduce the binomial, you guys will divide by the GCF. You have to. So you have to divide if it has a greatest common factor, and this binomial you have to divide if it has a greatest common factor. So the only way you guys can understand and really know what to do is to show you guys an example. So let's go to the next slide here. And I'm going to start with this factor, this trinomial you guys want to factor. We have an x squared plus 7x plus 12. First of all, let's know what is a, b, and c. So your a value is the one with the x squared. A is an invisible 1. B is the one in the middle. So plus 7, b is going to be the term, the middle term. And c is going to be your constant. So 12 is your constant in this one. You guys will do your diagram right here. Just the x. You will multiply the a value times the c value. So a times the c, and that's going to be 12. Your b value, the one in the middle, is a positive 7 plus 7. So I'm going to put a 7 right there. Now you guys are going to look for two factors, two numbers that multiply to 12 and they add up to 7. So the only way you guys can do this is just check. You guys can look for those numbers and see which ones multiply to 12 and add up to 7. So this is what I mean. If I find the numbers, or if I use the numbers 1 and 12, 1 times 12 is 12. So yeah, we get the number on the top. But when I add 1 plus 12 is 13. So that's not 7. So that set of numbers is not what we're looking for. So let's look for another set. I know that 2 times 6 is 12. But if you add 2 plus 6, that's going to be 8, not 7. So this set of numbers is not the one we need to use. So I'm going to go to 3. 3 times 4 is 12. And guess what? 3 plus 4 is going to be 7. So this is the set of numbers I need to use in that diagram. So that's what you do, guys. You can do a list on the side of the diagram. You check the numbers, you multiply, and you have to get this number on the top. And at the same time you add, and you guys get this number on the bottom. So the numbers that we need to use are 3 and 4. 3 times 4 is 12, and 3 plus 4 is 7. So now you guys, step number 2, are going to have your two binomials right here. Notice I have my two parentheses. I'm going to bring down my ax term. Remember, ax, or the a is 1. So a 1x goes here. So I'm going to put a 1x, and a 1x goes over here. But guys, we don't need that 1 next to the x. So I'm just going to erase the 1, erase the 1 here. But you do have an invisible 1 right there. Okay, guys? So let me move the x a little bit to the left here. X. So we have an x and an x. If you use the distributive property, x times x, that's going to be an x squared. So that's what we want. Now, you guys are going to bring down your factors. So this factor here, positive 3, I'm going to put it inside the parentheses. And this one here, I'm going to put it inside the parentheses. Plus 4, positive 4. Check if you guys have GCF, greatest common factor. And we talked about GCF, greatest common factor, in my previous video, section 8.5. So you guys can watch that again if you guys forgot what it is. But you guys want to find the greatest common factor for the binomials. So remember, we had an invisible 1 here. We have a 3. The only factor they have in common is 1. So you don't want to divide by 1. Nothing is going to change if you divide by 1. But you guys need to check. Over here, you guys have a 1. You guys have a 4. So the greatest common factor is 1 again. So you guys don't want to divide by 1. So the only thing you guys can divide is 1, but we don't have to do that. So my answer, the one that I'm looking for, is this right here. You guys have x plus 3 times x plus 4. So that's what we want. We want to find those two binomials that will multiply to the trinomial. Let me give you guys a tip. If you are wondering, well, do I got the right answer? If you check, if you multiply x times x, you guys will get an x squared. If you guys multiply a 3 times the 4, you guys will get a 12. How do you check if you guys get it in the middle, the term in the middle? Well, you guys can actually multiply. I'm going to multiply these two terms right here. 3 times x, that's going to be 3x. I'm going to multiply the x times the 4. That's going to be 4x. And when you combine 3x plus 4x, that's going to be 7x, which is the one in the middle. So that is our answer. X plus 3 times x plus 4. Now look at this one here, number 2. You guys have 42 minus 13q plus q squared. When you guys want to factor a quadratic trinomial, the first thing you guys want to do is make sure to check if it's in standard form. So the highest exponent is first. So this one here is not in standard form. You guys have the highest exponent last from left to right. So this is the first term, 42 minus 13q plus q squared. So what we have to do is move the terms around and make sure you guys have the standard form. So I am going to write the q squared first, minus 13q, and the 42 is going to be last. So this is standard form. The highest exponent is first. You guys have the squared, and then the q squared, and then the q with exponent of 1, and then the constant. So now I need to know my a, b, and c. So a is the one with the q squared, and that's an invisible 1. B is the one in the middle, and C is the one with no variable, the constant. So now I'm going to do my diagram right here. I'm going to multiply A times the C, 1 times 42, and that's going to be 42. And the B term, the one in the middle, is negative 13. All right, guys. So look, when you guys have the negative number on the bottom, that means that when you combine these two numbers here, we need to find the factors. They need to combine to a negative 13. So let me give you guys a tip. If this number up here is positive, that means you guys will have same signs for those two numbers. So the number on the left side here, the number on the right side will be the same sign. What sign do you need to use? Well, the number on the bottom is going to tell you guys a sign. So this one has to be negative, this one has to be negative, because the number in the middle is positive. So let me show you guys that right now. Negative times a negative number is going to be a positive. So the only thing we need to find is what numbers actually combine to 13 and they multiply to 42. So let's go ahead and try that right now. Okay, so I know that 1 times 42, that is 42. But if you guys make them negative, negative 1 minus 42, that's going to be negative 43. So that doesn't work. I'm going to try something else. Negative 2 and times negative 21. That's going to be negative 23 when you combine, not 13. So those don't work. So let me cross those out. These don't work. Let's try the 3. Negative 3 and we have negative 14. Negative 3, negative 14, they add up, they combine to negative 17, so those don't work. 4 doesn't go into 42, 5 doesn't go into 42, 6 goes into 42, 6 times 7, and if you make those negative, negative 6 and negative 7, that's positive 42, And negative 6 minus 7, negative 13. So those are the numbers that we need to use in the diagram. So let me cross this one out here. All right, so now you guys are going to do your two binomials. Here's one, here's the second one. So my ax term, now this one is not an x, it's a q, but that's fine. We're going to use the q instead of the x. But I'm going to have a 1q. So 1q is just a q. So I need a q here and a q over here. I'm going to bring down my factors. So negative 6 minus 6 goes here, and minus 7 goes over here. And that's my answer. Because, think about it. When you guys look at the 1 and the 6, you guys cannot divide by a GCF. They don't have a common factor other than 1. And this one has a 1 and a minus 7. You guys cannot reduce, cannot divide. So my answer will be q minus 6 times q minus 7. And you guys can check one more time. Q times q, that's q squared. Q times negative 7, that's negative 7q. Negative 6 times q, that's negative 6q. Negative 7q minus 6q, that would be negative 13q when you guys combine. And when you multiply negative 6 times negative 7, that's positive 42. So we got the right answer. All right, so let's go ahead and try another one here. And this is just practice, guys. When you guys combine, you guys factor, make sure that it is in standard form. So first, I'm going to move the things around. I'm going to write it in standard. So x squared minus 17x minus 60 right there. I'm going to do my diagram, and I'm going to multiply a times c. So a is the first term with the x squared, and I multiply by the c value. 1 times negative 60, that's negative 60. My b value is negative 17. Right there, guys. Negative 17 goes on the bottom. And you guys find those two factors that multiply to negative 60. And they combine to negative 7. So you guys can do the list. 20 times 3 is negative 60. But if you turn that 20 to negative, negative 20 times 3, that's negative 60. And negative 20 plus 3, that would be negative 17. So it's all about these two numbers. Make sure they multiply to the one on the top and they combine to the one on the bottom. So now you guys are going to do your two binomials. Here's one, here's the other one. I do have a 1x term, so I'm going to put 1x here, or just an x over here, not the squared. Do not use squared, guys. You need 1x, 1x. And you guys bring down the factor minus 20 and the factor plus 3, and that is my answer, because you guys cannot divide the numbers anymore. So we got x minus 20 times x plus 3. All right, guys, let's try something different. Sometimes the polynomial is going to have a negative at the beginning of the trinomial. So if you guys have standard form, so notice the highest exponent is first, 2, and then the 1, and then the constant. And you guys have a negative at the beginning. First, you need to factor out the negative. So this negative has to come out, factor out from the trinomial. What do I mean? You guys are going to put a long parenthesis here. You're going to put the negative outside. That means you factor out. So from the inside of the parenthesis, you factor out. You took it out of the parenthesis. And you guys will divide the trinomial by a negative. So it is a negative 1 here, so just keep that in mind. And when you divide a negative 1 divided by negative 1, that's going to be a positive x squared. If you divide a negative 16 by a negative 1 here, it's going to be positive 16x. And the positive 17 divided by a negative, positive divided by negative, that's going to be a negative 17. So look what happens to the trinomial. Every time you guys factor out a negative, the signs change of the terms. So negative becomes a positive x squared, minus 16 becomes positive, and plus 16 becomes negative. So after you guys factor out the negative, now you can factor the trinomial. So I'm going to put the diagram right here. I'm going to multiply the a inside of the parentheses, not the one up here, the one inside. And we do have an invisible 1a times negative 17. And remember, I told you guys at the beginning of the video, a is going to be 1 for this section, for this video. The next section, a is not going to be 1. But we are going to multiply 1 right now by negative 17. That's negative 17. And 16 is your b value. So the two terms that multiply to negative 17 and they add up to 16, 17 and negative 1. 17 times negative 1 is negative 17. And you guys have 17 minus 1 is 16. So now you guys do your two factors. Here's one, here's the other one. You need an x and an x. That's your x term. Notice here 1x, not the one up here, guys, the one inside of the parentheses. This is what we are factoring. So 1x here, so 1x, 1x. And you guys bring down your factors. Plus 17 here, minus 1 over here. And guys, remember that negative we factor out? You have to bring it down. It is part of your answer. The negative is outside. You didn't use it in the diagram. I didn't use it here, but it is part of the answer. So your answer will be a negative outside, x plus 17 times x minus 1. When you guys multiply everything together, you will get that trinomial back up here. If you're wondering how, well, you guys have to distribute this right here. Ignore the negative first. But when you guys distribute x times x, x times negative 1, 17 times x, 17 times negative 1, combine like terms, you will get this back. And then you guys will distribute the negative here, distribute and distribute, and you guys will get this back. So you're kind of working backwards if you guys want to check. But right now, we're not distributing, we are doing. We are doing the opposite of distributing. We are factoring. And let me show you guys when you have two different variables. And I know I said a quadratic trinomial only has one variable, but sometimes they do work when you guys have two different variables like this one here. You guys do have an x squared minus 4xy minus 77y squared. So kind of ignore the y squared at the end. The variable at the end, you guys don't pay attention to it. We are going to use it in a second, but we want to follow the steps that I show you guys when you guys factor using the diagram. So we do have the diagram here. A is going to be the first term, so A is 1 here. B is the one in the middle, negative 4. And C is not a constant, but it's going to be the one at the last of the trinomial. So the minus 77 is going to be your C value. You will multiply the A and the C. So 1 times negative 77. That's negative 77. Your B value is negative 4. So you put a minus 4 here. The two numbers that multiply to negative 77 and add up to 4 is negative 11 times 7. That's going to be negative 77, and negative 11 plus 7, that's negative 4. Now, you guys are going to put your two binomials here, and you guys will have your ax, so a is 1x, so 1x here, 1x over here. And you guys bring down the minus 11, and you guys bring down the plus 7. Now, you guys are going to use the y squared. Think about this, guys. If you multiply x times x, that's going to be x squared, 1x squared. If you multiply negative 11 times 7, that's going to be negative 77, but we need the y squared. So what that means is we need the y next to the 11 and the y next to the 7. If you guys put the y there, negative 11y times positive 7y, that's going to be negative 77y squared. Y times y is a y squared. So that's how you factor. The x squared is at the beginning of the parentheses, x times x, and the y squared is at the end of the parentheses. And it doesn't matter what variable you guys have. You might have a p here, so you put p and another p over here. You might have a k squared here, so you put a k here and a k right here. But you guys have your answer, x minus 11y times x plus 7y. Alright guys, so I'm going to do a second video, and the second video for this section is going to be about solving. All I show you guys in this one is how to factor. So I was preparing for you guys to solve by factoring. So make sure you guys check that out. If you guys like my videos, you can hit that button, the like button, and you guys can also subscribe to my channel, and make sure you guys practice, and I'll see you guys later.